Hi, welcome back to the Property Frontline. My name's Deborah and I'm here with Scott. And today we're talking about the 2024 property market forecast. The reason we're talking about this is because SQM Research has just released their Boom Bust report, and it's a report that we both enjoy reading.
Absolutely.
The reason is that Louis Christopher, who publishes the report, is recognised as probably the only consistently correct forecaster for the industry. So you'll hear lots of other forecasts, but really
Just a really good track record. I think we've trusted Louis' work for some time.
Yeah. Okay, so what's in the report? What's he forecast, Scott?
Well, we've got some numbers out here in front of us. We'll just do a quick flip through. Nationwide house price growth for 2024. It's quite conservative, actually, Deborah. He's projecting we may see a 1% market fall on average, possibly to an increase of 3%. But when you dive into the individual capital cities, there's quite a lot of difference. Louis is quite bullish on Perth and Brisbane, our two more commodity-based cities, having their growth rates projected at between 4 and 9% for the two of them. He's got some middle-of-the-road cities, let's say in Adelaide, that may have flat growth to possibly 3%. Then we start getting into potential markets that may see falls, and Louis quite conservative, almost negative on Melbourne and Sydney. Just having a look at the forecasts for Sydney, which many of us are interested to see. He thinks the market could fall 4% in 2024, and Melbourne potentially 5%. The worst two cities on the list are Hobart and Canberra, and we have potential falls in those markets of 7 to 8%. So it's really kind of a mixed bag here.
Yeah, and of course, I would say Canberra, not a surprise at all. It's a very good example of buying in a city where there's kind of just one employer, which is the government. And so Louis is negative on Canberra because of the pullback in government spending.
Yeah, I'd say plus the thousands of new units that have gone up along the light rail as well. A very large oversupply of new units coming into that market. Louis does some interesting scenarios, which we'll note as well. He doesn't just give you one set of numbers. He likes to mix it up a bit. So he does a downside scenario where he says we may see some worse results than that if we get a Middle Eastern war and there's an oil embargo. Potentially the price of oil skyrockets up, and that leads to more inflation and even higher interest rates. So we've got a set of numbers to look at there. And then one that's a bit more optimistic, where migration numbers continue to stay very high for a longer period of time. So he gives us a different range of numbers here. Honestly, Deborah, there's really a lot here. There's kind of quite a guide here. I mean, do you think there's enough here to make decisions for an average investor or home buyer?
Well, really, while we really rate Louis, this is an example of one of the flood of forecasts that we're going to see, where we have to take this as just one piece of information in our decision making, because the forecasts are done at such a high level. It's really not enough for each individual owner or buyer of property to make some really good, solid decisions.
Certainly.
Yeah. So what I would say about these types of forecasts is that you make your decisions with this kind of thing in mind, but then look more at the individual suburb level performance, and also then you've got to look at property types and not only the type of property but the style, the size of the property. Like a 3-bedroom apartment market is going to move differently to a 1-bedroom apartment market, and you'd have an opinion on that, wouldn't you?
Well, Deborah, if I'm a Sydney home buyer right now, I mean, I'm seeing potentially a declining market. I mean, do I want to buy my home in Sydney right now?
Well, it could be a really good opportunity. It really does depend on your personal situation. So you can't just use these types of forecasts, or even worse, those hot suburb forecasts to make your decisions, because Sydney alone has over 800 different suburbs in the greater region. So you've really got to look at not only suburb but street level, and but generally, if we're saying that Sydney is going to flatline, there will be a few people who will be quite excited that they might actually, find their prices are within reach.
Well, fabulous. I will just add to that. Look, this is just a 1-year forecast, and we both work with lots of investors out there, and property's a long-term game. We're really looking at areas and markets that are going to grow over a 5 or 10-year period. So it's great to get that initial 1 year of growth, but we want to know where we're going to be at 10 years down the road. And we want to find that right market that has long-term growth drivers, potentially new infrastructure going into the areas, and Deborah's favorite, which is a gentrifying suburb, especially in our established cities, which can find some little nuggets of growth out there.
Nugget. Yes. Yeah, and that's where. So if Louis is correct and Sydney and Melbourne do flatline, well, I like those kinds of markets because it gives me more certainty. Because if you are a renovator, you'll know what you can get your property for, know how much your renovation will cost, and then you'll be able to get good comparable prices for what you'll be able to sell for after your renovation is complete. The types of markets that I really that are really challenging to buy in are the hot markets. It's where people make really silly decisions just out of fear of missing out. So we were talking earlier that maybe that's something that we need to think about with Perth in particular.
It's certainly a very hot established market out there, and we are active in that space, building houses out there. Over there, it's extremely competitive, and we're seeing a lot of people being pushed into the new property space, which is actually overheating it as well. So you need to be aware of a market which is overheated, making it very difficult to buy in.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you can't buy in those suburbs. It just means different tactics. So you just really need to be prepared to move fast and make your deals solid, not only on pricing but on the conditions.
Absolutely.
The offer conditions. Okay, so next then, what would you do, Scott? And what are we saying that buyers or owners should do in the 2024 market?
Look, I think for us, we haven't changed, which is you want to start with a long-term plan. You want to sit down and really work out up front what your goals are for investing in property. What's your time frame for doing that? What's your tolerance for covering holding costs? Do you have any particular area preferences yourself? I mean, you've got lots of clients that may have their own favorite market or two. Look at those. I love the market.
I thought you were asking me that question, but go on. Yeah. You love what?
But look, I love the markets where I've invested myself. It's not a bad idea if the person has some affinity to the market in the area where they own property.
Yeah. Yeah, because the old advice was, you shouldn't get emotional about property. But I have found, after advising people for over 10 years, that we're human. We can't take the emotion out of it. What we do is put the facts in. And so, you've got to buy in areas that you understand and that will work for you on a personal basis, because there's so many different factors other than the numbers to think about with property. And of course, there's so many ways to do well with property as long as you know what you're doing going in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that we would like to say before we wrap up?
We're still a big, huge fan of the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, well, the Sunshine Coast is absolutely ripping.
I will say this about Lewis, though. He's particularly selected the Gold Coast as a market he doesn't like, which is interesting because he's quite bullish on Brisbane. So to think Brisbane's going to do extremely well when markets like the Gold and Sunshine Coast are so close by and you've got the beaches there, it's just hard for me to fathom that they're not going to do equally as well. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's just an opinion.
Just an opinion,
Just an
yeah.
opinion.
And of course, it's worthwhile saying that you can find opportunity in any suburb as long as you do your due diligence first. So we have made a lot of money for our clients just by taking a very technical approach to their search and finding those rare opportunities while everybody else has chased some other random suburb. We've just stuck to the basics, bought in areas where there's really good a family base.
Yes.
So where there's good population growth, natural population growth, a good amount of job supply, like a variety. And so that does lead you to the main cities and the outer areas of those cities, not in these silly old greenfield areas out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, the small regional towns that we see on many people's hot suburbs lists. Honestly, you're only going to buy a couple of properties during your life, most likely. You just don't need to go that far inland, would be our opinion. A huge portion of the people in this country live near the coasts, and that's going to continue to be the case.
Yeah.
So why would you want to invest that far away from the coast, is my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much for watching. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Scott or myself. The links will be in the description of the video, and we wish you all the best for the coming year.
We'll hopefully be bringing you some more interesting topics soon, so stay tuned or send us some notes with topics you want to hear about.
Yes, do that. Okay. Thank you very much.